What if the real reason you're stuck in life has nothing to do with failure? What if the thing holding you back is actually your ability to succeed? It sounds backwards, almost absurd. But what if I told you most people don't run from failure? They run from the person they would have to become if they actually reach their potential. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever stood at the edge of something that could genuinely change your life? A new opportunity, a bold decision, a creative idea. And instead of moving forward, you hesitated. Not because you couldn't do it, but because something inside you resisted. You told yourself, I'll do it later. I'm not ready yet. It's not the right time. But deep down, you knew. You knew this mattered. So why didn't you move? This is the psychological mystery most people never fully confront. Because the truth is, there is a part of you that wants to grow, expand, evolve. And another part of you that is quietly terrified of what that growth would demand. And today we're going to explore that hidden tension. Not on the surface level, but deep within the unconscious patterns that shape your decisions. Because what you're about to understand may completely change the way you see yourself. But first, we need to uncover the first hidden force that silently keeps people away from their own potential. Section 1, the fear that disguises itself as logic. Most people believe they avoid growth because they lack discipline. But that's rarely the real reason. What actually happens is far more subtle. The mind creates reasonable excuses, not obvious ones, convincing ones. I need more time. I should prepare more. I'll start when I feel confident. And these sound rational, even responsible. But here's the uncomfortable truth. These thoughts often appear right at the moment you're about to step into something bigger. Why? Because growth threatens your current identity. And according to Carl Gustav Jung, your psyche is designed to protect that identity at all costs, even if that identity is limiting you. This is where something fascinating happens. The closer you get to your potential, the more resistance you feel. Not because you're incapable, but because you're approaching a psychological boundary. And your mind interprets that boundary as danger. So it pulls you back, gently, quietly, convincingly. But this is only the surface of what's really happening. Because underneath this resistance, there is something much deeper and much more uncomfortable. Section 2, the hidden cost of becoming more. Let's say you fully stepped into your potential. You became more confident, more capable, more expressive. What would change? At first, your mind imagines the rewards: success, recognition, freedom. But it rarely considers a cost. Because potential is not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility. The moment you realize you can do more, you lose the ability to pretend that you can't. And that changes everything. Suddenly, excuses don't work the same way. Avoidance feels heavier, inaction becomes harder to justify. And this creates internal pressure. Because now, you are no longer limited by circumstances. You are confronted by your own choices. And most people are not afraid of success itself. They are afraid of what success reveals about them. That they could have acted sooner, tried earlier, chosen differently. And that realization can feel overwhelming. So instead, the mind does something clever. It delays growth to preserve comfort. But here's where it becomes dangerous. Because this pattern doesn't just affect your goals. It starts shaping your entire life. And especially your relationships. Section 3, the fear of outgrowing your world. There's another reason people hold themselves back. And it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. The fear of separation. Human beings are wired to belong. For thousands of years, survival depended on it. So even today, Your brain treats social rejection as a real threat. Now think about what happens when you start changing. When you think differently, act differently, pursue something beyond what others expect of you. At first, people might support you, but over time, something shifts. You begin to step outside familiar roles, and not everyone is comfortable with that. Some may question you, some may doubt you, some may subtly pull you back, not necessarily because they want to hurt you, but because your growth disrupts their sense of normal. And this creates an internal conflict, because now you're choosing between evolving into who you could become or staying aligned with who others expect you to be. And here's the part most people don't realize. Sometimes we choose to stay small, not because we lack ambition, but because we don't want to lose connection. We don't want to feel different. We don't want to stand alone. But this is where things become psychologically complex, because the more you suppress your growth, the more disconnected you feel from yourself. And this leads us to one of Jung's most powerful ideas, the shadow. Section 4, the shadow you avoid becoming. According to Jung, every person carries a shadow, not just dark traits, but unrealized potential. Parts of yourself that were rejected, ignored, or never developed. And here's the paradox. Your shadow doesn't only contain what you fear, it contains what you're capable of becoming. Confidence you never expressed, creativity you never explored, strength you never claimed. And when you get close to these parts of yourself, something strange happens. You feel both excitement and discomfort, because embracing your potential means confronting the parts of you that have been hidden. And that can feel unfamiliar, even threatening. So instead of integrating that potential, many people project it outward. They admire it in others. They envy it. They criticize it, but they don't embody it. Because to embody it, they would have to change. And this is where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They don't destroy their potential directly. They distance themselves from it through doubt, distraction, comparison. But the deeper question is, why does becoming yourself feel so uncomfortable? And the answer lies in something even more fundamental: your identity. Section 5, the identity trap. From a young age, you begin to form a story about who you are. I'm not the confident one. I'm not creative. I'm not a leader. I'm just this kind of person. These statements may seem harmless, but over time, they become boundaries, invisible ones. Because once you identify with a certain version of yourself, anything outside that identity feels wrong, even if it's growth. So when opportunity appears, your mind doesn't just evaluate the risk, it evaluates the identity shift. And if that shift feels too big, it resists. This is why people say things like, "That's just not me," even when it could be. And this is where Jung's idea of individuation becomes essential. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were conditioned to be, not who others expect you to be, but who you are capable of becoming. And here's the uncomfortable part. This process requires letting go of your current identity. And that feels like loss, even if what you're losing is limitation. But this is where the real psychological barrier appears. Because what most people fear is not failure, it's transformation. Section 6, the fear of becoming someone new. Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow, and suddenly you are the person you've always had the potential to be. Confident, clear, capable. What changes? Your habits, your decisions, your relationships, your environment. Everything shifts. And that's exactly the problem. Because the mind doesn't just fear negative change. It fears any change that disrupts stability, even positive change. Because stability feels safe, predictable, controllable. So when transformation begins, The mind tries to slow it down. It introduces doubt. It questions your direction. It pulls you back into familiar patterns. Not because you're weak, but because your system is trying to maintain equilibrium. And this is where most people stop. Not at the beginning, but right before the breakthrough. And this is where the final realization becomes impossible to ignore. Final section, the truth that changes everything. There is something you need to understand. Your potential is not something you achieve. It's something you allow. It doesn't require perfection. It requires permission. Permission to explore, experiment, grow, change. Because the greatest risk in life is not failure. It's remaining who you are when you're capable of becoming more. And one day, that realization catches up with people. Not loudly, quietly, in moments of reflection. When they look back and think, what if I had tried? What if I had trusted myself? What if I had stepped forward instead of holding back? And that question is far heavier than failure will ever be. So let me leave you with this. If fear disappeared for just a moment, not forever, just long enough for you to act, what would you do? What would you start? What would you finally allow yourself to become? Because that answer is not random. It's a glimpse of your potential. And the moment you stop running from it, your life begins to change. Not all at once, but in small, powerful decisions. One step, then another, until one day you look back and realize the thing you feared the most was never your limitation. It was your expansion. And once you see that, you can never unsee it.